The locked door at low tide. This happened 2 years ago, right before I started my final year of college. My friend Jake's aunt owned a beach house in Nags Head, North Carolina. She was renting it out to vacationers during the summer, but there were 2 empty weeks at the end of August before hurricane season really picked up. Jake offered me and our 2 other friends, Noah and Cam, the chance to stay there for free as long as we helped clean the place up before we left. We were all broke college students, and this sounded like the perfect getaway. A free beach house, no parents, no crowds, and nothing to worry about except sand in our clothes and maybe drinking too much. I didn't even hesitate. I packed a duffel bag, grabbed some snacks and a bottle of cheap bourbon, and piled into Jake's beat-up Honda Civic with the guys. The house was right on the edge of the water. Like, literally, during high tide, the ocean practically lapped at the deck stairs. It was one of those long, narrow houses painted seafoam green, the kind that looks like it's been barely clinging to the dunes for decades. Weather-beaten wood, slightly tilted porch, and a weird smell of salt and something else, mildew maybe, that never quite left no matter how many windows you opened. There were 3 floors. The bottom was just storage and the laundry room. Second floor had the kitchen, living room, and a weird little hallway with one locked door Jake said used to be his uncle's workshop or something. Third floor had the bedrooms. We each picked one, threw our bags in, and immediately hit the beach. For the first 2 days, everything was awesome. We spent the mornings surfing, the afternoons drinking and playing cards, and the nights sitting out on the deck watching the stars. No one else was around. Most of the other vacation homes were already closed up for the season, so it felt like we had the whole shoreline to ourselves. It was peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. But then stuff started getting off. It began with sounds. Nothing crazy at first, just little things. Footsteps at night, faint creaking. We all joked that the house was haunted, mostly because it felt like it should be the wind would push through the old floorboards and make these weird groaning sounds, and the deck railing rattled constantly even when there was no breeze. On the third night, Noah asked if we'd heard someone walking around on the first floor the night before. I said no, Jake said maybe, but Cam nodded and said he definitely heard it too. We figured it was probably raccoons or something. That place was old and definitely not sealed tight. But then the locked door downstairs started rattling. It happened that night. Around 2 a.m., I was up late watching something on my phone with earbuds in when I noticed this soft knocking sound. At first, I thought it was coming from the wall, maybe Jake banging around in his room. But then I realized it was more like a rattle, like a doorknob shaking. I took out my earbuds and sat there for a second, holding my breath. There it was again. A soft clink, then a slow creak, like wood rubbing against wood. I grabbed my phone flashlight and stepped into the hallway. The noise was coming from downstairs. I hesitated for a minute, staring at the stairs like an idiot, trying to convince myself it was just the house settling. But something about the rhythm of the noise, so deliberate, so human, made my skin crawl. I walked down, barefoot, slowly, with every step feeling colder than the last. As I reached the second floor landing, the rattling stopped. I stood there in the dark, heart thudding, staring down the narrow hall at that locked door. It wasn't moving. Nothing was. I turned the light on. The hallway was empty. The door looked exactly the same, chipped paint, old brass knob, a tiny rusted keyhole. Just as I turned to go back upstairs, the doorknob twitched. I swear to God, just a little twitch. Enough to make a faint click sound. I didn't scream or run or anything, but I froze. Just locked in place like my body forgot how to move. I finally walked backward, eyes never leaving that door, until I reached the stairs and bolted back up to bed. I didn't tell the others the next morning. Maybe out of pride, or maybe because I didn't want to be the reason we bailed early. We only had a few days left anyway. But then things got worse. 2 nights later, Cam woke me up at 4 a.m. He was pale and sweaty and looked freaked the hell out. He said he heard whispering from the hallway. Not just whispering, his name. Being whispered over and over in this slow, gravelly voice. When he opened his door to check, there was nobody there. But when he looked down the stairs, he saw the locked door swinging slightly, like it had just closed. I didn't say anything at first. Then I told him about what I'd seen. His face went cold. He didn't even try to laugh it off. We woke Jake and Noah. Noah was half asleep and didn't believe us. Jake just sat there quiet. Then he told us something he'd been keeping to himself. His uncle died in that room. He hadn't told us because he thought it would freak us out. Apparently, years ago, Jake's uncle had been not right paranoid. Claimed people were watching him. He started barricading himself in that room, said it was the only place he felt safe. Then one day, he stopped coming out. They found him dead inside, sitting in a chair facing the wall. No signs of struggle, no cause of death that made sense. The door had been locked from the inside. I didn't know what to say. Suddenly, the weird noises, the feelings of being watched, the door. It all felt different, heavier. Like this wasn't just an old house creaking. The next day, we decided to stay out of the house as much as possible. We grabbed food, hung out on the beach, and just tried to pretend everything was fine. None of us said it, but we were scared to be inside. The final night, a storm rolled in, not a hurricane, just a bad squall with high winds and pounding rain. The windows shook, the power flickered, and then, at 11:43 p.m., the lights went out completely. We all gathered in the living room with our phones for light. We decided to ride it out and sleep in shifts, half joking about ghost stories to try and stay sane. Around 1 a.m., I got up to use the bathroom. As I walked past the hallway, I heard it again. Click, rattle, then a whisper. It said my name. I froze, turned, and the locked door, was wide open. I don't know what possessed me, but I stepped forward. Slowly, one foot after the other, drawn toward the dark rectangle of that open doorway like it was pulling me. My flashlight flickered, then died completely. The air in the hallway dropped 10 degrees. I reached the doorway and looked in. The room was empty. No furniture, just bare wood floors, peeling wallpaper, and in the far corner, a chair, and something sitting in it. I couldn't see its face, just the shape of a manual, motionless, silent, staring straight at me. I stumbled backward, trying not to scream, slammed into the wall, and bolted back to the living room. The others saw my face and knew something had happened. We didn't speak. We grabbed our bags and left. Didn't even wait for sunrise. We drove 5 hours back home in silence, the storm pounding the car the whole way. Later that week, Jake told his aunt. She didn't act surprised. Just said, "I told my brother to burn that damn room down." She changed the locks, hired a contractor to seal the door completely. But to this day, Jake swears he still has dreams of that hallway. And in everyone, the door is open again. What we found in the sand. This happened last summer, during a family vacation that was supposed to be a reset. You know the kind. Everyone's burnt out, schedules are a mess, and someone suggests a beach trip to bring us all back together. It was my mom's idea. She rented a house in Cape Cod for a week, right on the water, big enough for all 6 of us, my parents, my sister, my aunt and uncle, and me. I hadn't taken time off in months. I worked a soul-sucking remote job, stuck in the same room day in and day out. This trip felt like the escape I needed. Ocean breeze, good food, no emails, at least that's what I thought. The house itself was charming in that old colonial way. Cedar shingles, wraparound porch, worn floors, tons of windows from the outside. It looked like something out of a postcard. It sat on a bluff just above the beach, with a little private staircase that led straight down to the sand. We arrived in the late afternoon. The air was thick with salt and heat, and that soft hiss of waves rolling in and out. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect. We spent the first 2 days doing the usual vacation stuff, eating lobster rolls, playing cards, going on beach walks. I even started to feel like a kid again. No deadlines, no meetings, just me and the sea. But on the 3rd day, we found something buried. We were down at the beach after dinner. It was just me and my younger sister, Danny. The rest of the family had gone into town for ice cream, but we decided to stay back and walk the shoreline. The tide was going out, and the sky was stained orange and purple, One of those sunsets that makes you feel like the world is actually okay. We were just goofing around, kicking at shells, drawing stuff in the wet sand, when Danny tripped over something. She let out a little yelp and stumbled forward. When I turned to help her, I saw it, a wooden corner, barely sticking out of the sand. She thought it was a piece of driftwood at first, but when I brushed away some of the sand, I realized it wasn't natural. It was a box. We dug it out together. It was old, maybe a foot long, with iron hinges and a small, rusted latch. It looked like it had been in the ocean for years, salt-eaten, discolored, and heavy with water. There were carvings all over the top, little spirals and symbols I didn't recognize. We both stared at it for a minute, unsure of what to do. It felt weird, like it shouldn't have been there, like it didn't want to be touched. Danny, being more adventurous than me, unlatched it before I could say anything. Inside was a bundle of wet fabric, folded tightly, and something wrapped in it. She peeled it back slowly. It was a jawbone. Small, human-looking, and tucked beside it was a handful of teeth. No roots, just perfectly clean enamel, white and smooth and glistening in the dying light. I remember how quiet everything got in that moment. No wind, no birds, just the waves and the pounding in my ears. Danny dropped the cloth and took a step back, her face pale. I slammed the box shut and picked it up. We brought it back to the house without speaking. Our hands were shaking the whole time. Once inside, we set it on the kitchen table under the pendant light. No one else was home yet. We unwrapped the contents again, hoping maybe we were wrong. Maybe they weren't real. Maybe it was just a weird old Halloween prop, but it wasn't, not even close. The teeth looked like they'd come straight from a dentist's tray. Perfectly lined, no decay. The jawbone was small, maybe a kid's. The cloth it was wrapped in had faded embroidery that looked almost religious. Not Christian though, something older, stranger. Danny started panicking, asking if we should call the cops, but for some reason I said no. I still don't know why. It wasn't fear. It wasn't denial. It was something deeper, like the moment we dug it up, we became part of it, and now we had to see it through. My uncle walked in maybe 10 minutes later. He was buzzed from dinner, joking about how we were missing the best fudge in town, until he saw our faces. He looked at the box, then looked at us, and then, very quietly, asked where we found it. We told him everything. His mood shifted immediately. He closed the box and took it into the garage without another word. When the rest of the family came home, he acted like nothing had happened. But I couldn't stop thinking about it, neither could Danny. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the box, but because of the noises. Scratching, like fingernails on wood, coming from the porch. I got up to check, thinking maybe it was a raccoon or something. But the porch was empty. Moonlight was streaming in through the slats, casting long shadows on the floorboards. I turned to go back inside, and that's when I saw it. A small footprint in the sand just outside the porch. Not adult-sized, not a shoe bare, and small, like a child's. I told myself it was Danny. She was only 17. Maybe she came outside barefoot earlier. I went back to bed. The next day, my uncle was gone. His car was missing. No note, no explanation. My aunt said he probably went into town for bait or groceries. But by lunch, she was calling his cell over and over, straight to voicemail. We searched the house. The box was gone. His car turned up later that evening, abandoned down by the docks. Windows rolled down, keys still in the ignition. His phone was inside, too, screen cracked, battery drained. He didn't come back. We called the police, filed a missing persons report. They questioned all of us, searched the beach, brought in dogs. Nothing turned up. That night it rained hard. Thunder, lightning, the works. I sat up staring out the bedroom window, feeling sick to my stomach. And then, just past midnight, I saw something move on the beach. A figure, standing in the surf, facing the house. Small, unmoving. I blinked and it was gone. Danny came into my room 20 minutes later, sobbing. She said she'd woken up to the sound of whispering, not in the hall, inside her room, right next to her ear. A voice saying her name over and over until she screamed and the noise stopped. We were done after that. We packed up before sunrise and left. My uncle was never found. Weeks later, back home, I tried to do some digging. I looked up local legends, disappearances, anything, and eventually I found something. A string of old newspaper articles from the 1930s. 3 children had gone missing in that same area over the span of 2 summers. No suspects, no leads. The only thing linking them was a strange symbol found carved into the trees along the beach. The same one we'd seen on the box. The cases were never solved. I told Danny, we made a pact to never go back there. We haven't spoken about it since. But sometimes, when I walk the shoreline near my apartment, I find the house that wasn't there yesterday. This story isn't something I ever plan to tell publicly. Not because it's too personal or too painful, but because I know exactly how it sounds, and I know most people won't believe a word of it. Hell, I wouldn't believe it if it hadn't happened to me. But it did, and I haven't been the same since. It started on a solo trip I took 2 summers ago, right after a brutal breakup and the death of my dog within the same month. I was spiraling, mentally and emotionally. I needed to get out of the city, to go somewhere that didn't remind me of anything. My therapist suggested taking a week off and doing something just for myself. A full reset, she called it. I found this tiny rental on a travel site, barely even listed. It wasn't part of a resort, not on a main beach, just a small cottage a few miles outside a town called Pine Barrow, off the coast of Maine. I'd never heard of it, but the pictures showed a foggy little stretch of beach with huge boulders and black sand, quiet, empty. Perfect. I booked it for 5 days. When I got there, the first thing I noticed was how still everything was. No wind, no birds, just that weird low drone you get near the ocean when it's completely calm. The house sat on a bluff, overlooking the beach. White wood siding, 2 windows, single front door. I couldn't see any other homes nearby. Just thick trees on either side and a winding path back to the road. I settled in, unpacked, and poured myself a drink. The inside was clean but sparse, just a bed, a table, a small kitchen, and a huge window facing the ocean. The first night was peaceful. I fell asleep listening to the waves, the kind of sleep that feels deeper than it should be. It wasn't until the second night that things changed. I'd spent most of the day walking the shoreline and sketching in my notebook, something I hadn't done in years. Around sunset, I decided to climb the small ridge just north of the house. I'd seen it from the window and figured it might give me a nice view of the area. It took maybe 10 minutes to reach the top, and that's when I saw it. Another house. Not mine. A different one, maybe 50 yards down the beach, tucked against the rocks. Which was weird, because it hadn't been there yesterday. It looked older, taller. Black siding instead of white. Windows that were too narrow, too tall, and the front door was slightly open. I stood there for a minute, trying to make sense of it. Had I really not noticed it the day before? Had the fog just been thicker? Had it been behind the rocks? I climbed down to get a closer look. The sand around it was undisturbed. No footprints. No tire tracks. Just smooth wet sand stretching from the rocks to the house front steps. I should have turned around. I should have gone back to my cottage, locked the door, and never looked back. But I didn't. I walked up the steps. The wood groaned under my weight. I knocked on the door. No answer. So I pushed it open. Inside was wrong. The air was warm, humid. The kind of humidity that sticks to your lungs and makes it hard to breathe. The walls were lined with bookshelves, but every book was blank. Completely white. No titles. No markings. The furniture was covered in sheets that didn't look dusty. They looked wet, like they'd been soaked and left to dry. And then there was the mirror. In the center of the room, mounted to the far wall, was a massive mirror. 10 feet tall, framed in black wood with carvings along the top, like vines or maybe tentacles. I walked up to it. And that's when I noticed something I still can't explain. My reflection didn't move right. It was delayed, maybe half a second, like a lag on a video call. I tilted my head slowly, and my reflection followed, but just a beat too late. I blinked. It didn't. I reached out my hand. So did it. But instead of pressing against the glass, my hand sank into it. Not through it, into it like water. I yanked my hand back and ran. I didn't look back. Not until I was inside my cottage with the door locked and every light on. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that reflection, watching me, smiling slightly, almost like it had been waiting. When morning came, I told myself it was a dream, a stress hallucination, anything to make it make sense. I went back up the ridge to check. The black house was gone. Completely. No footprints, no structure, no foundation. Just rocks and sand and that same eerie calm. But that wasn't the worst part. When I got back to my cottage, something felt different. The air smelled stale, like a room that hadn't been opened in years. And everything was off. My suitcase wasn't where I left it. My clothes were folded on the chair, but not how I fold them. The pages of my sketchbook were filled, not with drawings, but with sentences. The same sentence, over and over. I saw you. I saw you. I saw you. I saw you. Over 100 times. I should have left right then. But I didn't. Part of me wanted to believe I was just sleepwalking. Losing my mind. Something I could fix back home. I stayed one more night. Just one. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound I can't really describe. It was like breathing, but not human, heavier, wetter. Like something pretending to breathe. It was coming from the front door. I didn't move. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening. After a few minutes, it stopped. Then came the whispering, right outside the window. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like multiple voices. High-pitched, almost like children, saying something in unison. I turned my head to look, and there they were. Not kids, not people. Reflections, dozens of them, standing outside the window, staring at me, each one identical, pale, hairless, black eyes. Each one of them was me, but wrong, distorted, stretched, grinning. I screamed and they scattered, melting into the fog like they'd never been there. I left that morning, didn't pack, didn't shower, just grabbed my keys and drove until I saw a gas station. I haven't been back to Pine Barrel, haven't even looked it up since. I did try to find the rental listing again once, just to